If you've ever make up in your mind that God is looking for me to die to my flesh, that his spirit might live, you've got to understand that there is no greater man throughout the scriptures better to teach us that lesson, saints, than Paul. Amen. Paul was a murderer of God's people. He even said himself in one account later on in the book of Acts that he was one of the world's worst, that went against the will of God, what the Bible calls the way. The way is simply a path or a course that God wanted his people to be on, and Paul hated that. Paul didn't want God's people to follow him because he knew that if they fully gave their lives to God, God would do some mighty things in their lives. But it's funny how when you choose to go your own path, God will put you on a path, and he will put you in a position where nobody can help you but him, because God is not trying to hurt you. God is trying to help you. And you don't have to look far. Just ask me and I'll be a witness to tell you that when God has a purpose for your life, he will put you in a place to be able to show you that what you're doing is not working. And as soon as you die to yourself and live for me, I'll show you great things that I want to do for you. And I know I've got some people tonight who know that there's some greater still left in them. Come on, somebody. You know that where you are and what you have accomplished, you know that there's more in you to this. And do I have a witness tonight? Is there anybody here that knows that whatever you accomplish, how good it might be, you know that there's still some good left in me? And if I'm going to begin to find greatness in God, I've got to still stay on this journey to continue to find out what greatness really is. Just turn and tell somebody, say, neighbor, I want you to find out what greatness really is. Oh, yeah. When you understand what Paul is doing here, you can't understand, as I go to verse 7, when Paul saw that light, the next thing he experienced, saints, was a voice. Somebody say a voice. When Paul saw the light, next comes he heard a voice. And whenever great change comes from God, you have to listen for the sound in your spirit. I'm going to say that again. Whenever great change comes from God, you have to listen for a sound in your spirit. And I found out that many of us can't hear quite succinctly from God because we've got too many sounds going on at the same time. Has anybody ever been there when you know that God is trying to give a message to you, but he's fighting a frequency that he's really not on, and God is trying to tell you, I'm trying to get something in your spirit, not in your flesh, and these other sounds that are in your flesh are bouncing up against the frequency in which I'm trying to put in your spirit. And I found out, say, that the only way to really hear the voice of God, you got to put yourself in isolation. Anybody know anything about isolation? It's good to have friends. It's good to have company. It's good to be in a gathering with people, but every now and then you've got to move yourself from all of this hustle and bustle. She's saying this, he's saying that, your boss is saying this, your mom and them. Do I have a witness here? Everybody's talking and you can't hear the voice of God. And unless I be redundant, you cannot come into great change until you learn to hear that sound. You gotta learn to hear that sound. Tell your neighbor, say, neighbor, listen for the sound tonight. And I believe that if you listen closely tonight, a sound that you've been waiting on to hear from God, you'll be surprised how long it's been there. You just have not been able. Do I have a witness in here? If you listen to that sound closely, God says, I know I've been hearing that, but I couldn't quite make out what it was. It's because too many other sounds have been going on, and God had to knock the worst sinner there was in his time. He had to knock him off his horse, show him a bright light of Christ, and then call his name, and he said, Saul, Saul. Whenever you see double enunciation in the spirit, it means God settles a thing. When he says surely, surely, come on, I know I got some Bible reading. When he says verily, verily, when he says a thing twice, you got to know that with that thing he's saying, watch this, it's your first good place to praise him. Whenever you hear it twice, the thing he's trying to get you to see is, I'm trying to give you a double portion of what I'm saying. I got no help tonight. I turned and said, neighbor, there's a double portion tonight. Before I came here tonight, I went into my den and I prayed, and I was praying in the spirit, and then I saw a vision. God showed me a man pouring out 2 bottles of oil from both hands at one time. And then I was wondering at the time, I said, God, I received that. But as I was beginning to teach this right now, he just says, what you just said has now caught up with what I showed you. Y'all ain't hearing what I'm saying. And see, you got to understand that God never wants to give you just enough. We don't serve a God of just enough. We serve a God of more than enough. You ain't supposed to have just enough money. You ain't supposed to have just enough joy. You ain't supposed to have just enough peace. You ain't supposed to have just enough compassion. You ain't supposed to have just enough forgiveness. You're supposed to always be able to reach back and get more than enough. As a matter of fact, turn to my neighbor, you ain't supposed to never run out, because you are a king's kid. I wish somebody would take 15 seconds and give him double portion praise, double portion praise, double portion praise. And it's funny, because out of all the people who didn't deserve to get double, it was Paul. Let me pause right there. Because see, this one makes folk who hate you mad. Because see, when God begins to move in your life, they gonna say it ain't fair for him to get that. Because I know, y'all ain't hearing me, I knew him when, I know what he did, I know who he was with, I know what he said, I know how he fell out, I know how it all shook out. And they gonna say, God, this ain't fair for you to give him double or give her double. But they don't understand that God's grace and mercy always covers up any mistake you can ever make, because God don't bless double folk that are just perfect. God uses imperfect. Do I have to call the roll about imperfect people? God don't just get any and everybody that's got it all together. God uses murderers and whoremongers and drunks and folk who been, y'all ain't hearing me. God uses folk who got a testimony, and until you learn to fall in love with Acts 1 and 8, he says, I didn't give you my Holy Spirit just to give it to you. I gave it that you might be a witness for me. But the reason why we ain't witnesses is because we ain't gone through nothing. But there's a handful of folk tonight who are ready for double to come forth, because they know they have paid their... Has anybody paid their dues here tonight that you know that you've been through hell and high water and you ain't got to tell nobody? So when your blessing shows up, you ain't got to make no excuses about it. You ain't got to make nobody feel sorry. So you know what? I really don't deserve that. The devil is a lie. Everything that I got coming, I'm getting double, because I paid my dues for being just like Paul.